with Chad Doings coming up next. Alex Brink will stop by to talk football. Michael Holton in studio at 5:20, and former Sun Devil Rudy Carpenter's on the show.
It's time for the Rip City Drive, brought to you by Lazy Boy. What's your strategy for comfort? Featuring the crazy and often irrational longtime Portland radio vet, Chad Doing.
Wants to drive into the paint. Looks to the left. There's Cooper Flagg. 2-1 into the paint. Rises up and scores again. Top of the key. Cooper has it. A crossover. Run into by Pettiford. Steps through. Hops. Puts it off the window. Counted and a foul. What a strong drive for Cooper Flagg. 2 seconds and 1. It's Baker Mazar at the buzzer. Unable to get it to go. And it's over. A signature win early in the season for the Blue Devils and head coach Jon Scheyer as they knock off Auburn. 84-78, the final score.
If you don't want to come to compete, then that's other issues.
Because a guy is trying to do something to juice a game that needs to be juiced. And all the people that say this is like sacrilege, guess what? We got you. It's the young players, the young people. We don't have them. So we have to turn the ninth inning into an event where your best player is going up against the closer. And you see no value in that because nothing can change in baseball because it's not a sport. It's a religion. You all have to get your heads out of your butts.
Strap in. The Rip City Drive with Chad Doing starts now.
All right, what's going on, my friends? Rip City Drive with Chad Doing. And looking forward to the show today. We're going to talk a lot of football. And we have championship Friday and Saturday coming up. It'll kick off at 5 on Fox on Friday with the Boise State Broncos taking on the Runnin' Rebs of UNLV. And then we go right into Saturday morning with an early kickoff at 9 in the Big 12 championship game with Iowa State and Arizona State. So it's going to be great. We're looking forward to a championship weekend. Former Sun Devil Rudy Carpenter, he was quarterback of the Devils the last time they had a share in the conference championship. He's going to join the show, and we'll get his take on the Sun Devils, the job that Kenny Dillingham has done, what Sam Levitt means to that program as the best freshman in the country right now, and how difficult it's going to be for him to adjust in this game on Saturday without his best receiver, Jordan Tyson. So Rudy Carpenter is coming up at 3:20. Alex Brink, former Coug, our college football and NFL insider, will join the show coming up at 4:20. We'll get his take on the Cougs, who are losing their offensive coordinator, Ben Arbuckle. John Mateer has entered the transfer portal. Is he on his way to Oklahoma to join Arbuckle? And what about Jake Dickert? Is he there to stay this year? So we'll talk with Alex Brink. We got to get his take. I can't wait to ask him about that touchdown pass from Bo Nix on Monday Night Football, the 93-yarder that he threw from the end zone against the inverted Tampa 2 from the Browns. It was one of the best passes I have seen, and I'm just continuing to be amazed at the progress and growth of Bo Nix. He is looking more and more like the guy that the Broncos hoped he would be, like a franchise quarterback, that they found their QB1, that maybe all of the issues they've had since Peyton Manning shut it down have been resolved after a decade of horrendous quarterback play and no direction. They now have the richest ownership group in the NFL. They have one of the best coaches in Sean Payton, and now they got Bo Nix. So we'll talk with Alex Brink at 4:20. And at 5:20, the one and only Michael Holton is going to join us in studio for some Holton on Hoops. Got to get his take on the Intuit Dome. He made the trip down on, a couple of nights ago. He was on the television broadcast with because Lamar Hurd is out. And so he had a chance to go into the Dome. I want to get his take on the Dome. I would love to go see a basketball game at Intuit Dome. I can't believe that the Clippers of all teams now play in the crown jewel of the NBA. thanks to Steve Ballmer and his ridiculous cash. So Michael Holton in studio at 520. If you want to reach out, you can join me and be a part of the program. 503-248-0620 is the telephone number. You can also hit me up on social media. You'll find me there, Chad Doing or at Chad in Rip City, and let's do this. Championship weekend is coming up. Just a few things that I'm looking for in a couple of these games I want to talk about. I think the most exciting part about championship weekend, and I know a lot of people are frustrated with championship weekend because if you're SMU, playing in that extra game against Clemson may bump you out of the playoff. If they lose that game, they're probably going to get left out, and the Crimson Tide are going to be in. If Clemson wins the game, they're in, and SMU would probably be out. Probably. If SMU wins, then Clemson's out, and SMU will be in the playoff. But the great thing about championship weekend that we're seeing Friday and Saturday with the expanded playoff is that we have 3 games that are essentially playoff games. It starts with Friday's game up in Boise with the Broncos and UNLV. Winner will be in the playoff. The loser's out. Saturday morning with the Big 12 Championship, ASU and Iowa State. Winners in the playoff, losers out. And then the nightcap or the ACC title game, more than likely winner in, and then loser is out. There would be a debate. If SMU loses the game, there'll be a debate inside the committee between SMU and Alabama, but based on resume, I would be willing to bet my bottom dollar that Alabama will get the nod over SMU. So the great thing is, man, how great is it that we get 3 games that are essentially playoff games? Win and you're in. It doesn't get any better than that. So a couple of thoughts on these games as we get ready for championship weekend, and including the Big Ten title game with Penn State and Oregon. 3 things I'm looking at in the Mountain West championship game. You know, how are the Rebels going to do playing outdoors? It's going to be at Boise up there on the Smurf turf at Albertson Stadium. Temperatures, I think, are going to be in the low 30s. It's going to be cold, and they're from Vegas, and they play in a dome. And I don't like to overblow weather conditions, but it's going to be a factor, not to mention the crowd and the blue turf. How will they adjust to being outside in the cold? You know, teams that play in domes, teams that play in warm weather cities typically don't do so well when they're outdoors in the conditions. And, of course, Boise State's used to it because they play up there in Boise. So I think that's going to be a factor. How do they adjust? How do they handle it? And what is Barry Odom doing to get those guys ready mentally for the conditions? Also, how are the Broncos going to do in defending Haj Malik Williams, the runner, dual-threat quarterback from UNLV? He's been terrific. He is pretty dynamic, especially when he's running the football. And Boise State has struggled defending running quarterbacks. So I think this is going to be a matchup to watch in this one. And then also, clearly, Heisman candidate Ashton Jeanty, best running back in the country, putting up massive numbers. In the first meeting between these two down in Vegas, Jeanty did rush for over 120 yards, but it took him 33 carries. These two teams are by far the best teams in the Mountain West. They're both very good defensively, and UNLV does a very good job against the run. If they can prevent Jeanty from having a video game numbers type of effort, they're going to have a chance. Neither team makes a lot of mistakes. It's going to be a lot of fun. It should be good, clean football. And I like that. Good coaching, clean football, teams that are smart and execute very well. I don't expect a ton of mistakes, but those are my factors. How are the Rebs going to adjust to the weather, being outside in the cold? How will the Broncos do it defending the dual-threat quarterback Haj Malik Williams? And then will Jeanty be able to get off and put up massive numbers? Or can the Rebs and their run defense contain him enough to put themselves in a position to win the game? Broncos are favored by 4. Winner is in of the playoff. Loser is out. Big 12 title game, Saturday morning down in Dallas. Iowa State and Arizona State. This game features 2 great coaches. Big fan of Kenny Dillingham. He's in his 2nd year. He's already improved the team's 7 wins year over year. And then you got Matt Campbell at Iowa State, who's one of the best. Both are young, both have a strong conviction, and both have really developed great culture within their programs. Hiring coaches that fit what they want to do and, recruiting kids that want to be a part of their programs and play the way that these guys want to play. Now, the Devils are going to be without Jordan Tyson, one of the best receivers in the country, by far their number 1 weapon outside. will the Devils have enough balance without Tyson? I think more importantly, the Cyclones don't defend the run well. Cam Scatterbo, one of the best players in college football, Iowa State's run defense will likely determine the winner in this one. It's going to be 9 a.m. on Saturday, and right now ASU is favored by 2.5, 2.5, depending on which book you're looking at. Same thing as we have in the Mountain West. Win, and you're in. Now, the Big Ten title game, I don't understand why the line is only 3.5. Why is that? Am I missing something here? The fraudulent Penn State Nittany Lions only getting 3.5 against the Oregon Ducks, who have been the best team in the conference. The big question here is Penn State going to be able to run the football? It's hard to see Oregon losing this game, but the line is so low, it's weird, and it kind of smells fishy to me. It's odd. If everything goes chalk this weekend, though, Oregon would be the number 1 seed and likely playing the winner of Penn State and Tennessee. So if it basically goes chalk this weekend, aside from SMU and Clemson, I think SMU is a slight favorite, but I expect Clemson to win that football game. Based on what the committee would likely do, is you would have Clemson as the number 12 seed. You would have Alabama the 11th, Indiana the 10th seed, Tennessee 9, Penn State 8, Georgia 7, Ohio State 6. And then your 5th seed would be Notre Dame. And your top 4 would be Oregon, Texas, Boise State, and Arizona State. Now, in this scenario, if this is the way that the brackets play out, based on the results of the games this weekend, you would have number 9 Tennessee playing at Penn State in the first round, and the winner of that game would advance to face Oregon in the second round. That would be awesome. The thought of Tennessee traveling to Penn State's amazing, and then seeing either Penn State or Tennessee advance to face Oregon in that second round would be great. Also in this bracket, if the chalk holds up this weekend, number 5 Notre Dame against number 12 Clemson. The winner of that game would advance to face Arizona State. Number 7 Georgia would host number 10 Indiana. The winner of that one would move on to face Texas. And then number 6 Ohio State hosting number 11 Alabama, with the winner advancing to face Boise State. Can you imagine how awesome that would look if you get Bama at Ohio State in the first round for a campus site playoff game? Oh, my goodness. Give me some of that. All right, we'll come back, and when we do the last quarterback of the Sun Devils when they shared in a conference championship, Rudy Carpenter is going to join the show. We'll get his take on the program, the work that Dillingham has done, and who he thinks is going to win the game on Saturday. And then at 4:20, Alex Brink. We'll cover all the title games. Got to ask him about Bo Nix. Alex Brink at 4:20. Michael Holton in studio at 5:20. You got the Rip City Drive. All right, our next guest was the quarterback the last time Arizona State won a conference championship. He played 4 years in the NFL with the Cowboys and Buccaneers. It's my pleasure to welcome Rudy Carpenter back to the show. Rudy, thanks for your time. You know, I think the Sun Devils are the best story in college football this season. 7-win improvement for Kenny Dillingham from year to year. How has he been able to turn it around so quickly?
Well, that's a good question. I don't even think he has the answer to how he was able to turn it around so quickly, but I think the transfer portal really helped him out. I think the commitment from the athletic department and the new athletic director, Graham Rossini, really helped him out. I think his coaching staff has done an incredible job. But I think the main thing that Kenny Dillingham has done a really good job with, and what sets him apart, I think, from everybody else, is that he's one of the few coaches that has embraced all of the new changes when it comes to college football. And what I mean by that is he's embraced NIL. He's embraced trying to get his players paid and paid as much money as possible. He uses the transfer portal and uses it to his advantage when it comes to signing new players. But when he has players who are on his current roster who are unhappy and want to enter the transfer portal, he's not one of those guys that gets upset and salty. He's one of those guys that supports his young players, helps those young players find new places to go to school where they can contribute and be happy and have a good football career. And I think because of that and because of his attitude and those core beliefs, I think it's made it really, really easy for those players to trust him and to buy in to what he's trying to get them to do.
Hey, Rudy, have you spent time around Coach Dillingham? And if so, I was just curious on what you think about him as a coach and individual.
Yeah, I've spent a lot of time around Kenny. When I first met Kenny, he was actually the offensive coordinator for one of our local high schools here in Arizona called Chaparral High School, and they were winning state championships and doing a really good job. And I got to meet Kenny then, and I actually, the year that Kenny left to go to ASU as a quality control analyst coach, whatever title he was, Chaparral had a hole on their coaching staff and needed to hire an offensive coordinator, and I actually replaced him and took that job for just that 1 year. But Kenny's he's a good guy. He's a young guy. He's positive. He's energetic. I think more than anything, Kenny Dillingham literally used to be someone who went to ASU and was a student at ASU, and he used to sit in the student section and be one of those crazy students cheering on his team, while his current wife was legitimately on the ASU cheerleading squad. So I just think for Kenny, he's all in. This is his dream job. This is the final stop in his career. It's the only place he wants to be. And I think that allows him to be very, very authentic. And I'm sure, as you guys know and you've seen in your life, when you come across people who are real and who are authentic and they're at the place they want to be, it's transparent and it shines through.
Yeah, there's no question about that. We're talking with former Sun Devil Rudy Carpenter here on the Rip City Drive. How much do you think it helps? Because I've never been a part of a football program, but you have. How much do you think it helps that Dillingham has got guys on his staff who are from the Valley, who want to be there just like he does? I mean, how much does that help with what they're trying to accomplish?
Me personally, I think it's everything. You know, I just told you, Kenny Dillingham grew up in Scottsdale. He went to Chaparral High School. He coached at Chaparral High School, and he literally grew up tailgating at Sun Devil Stadium. His family was always recognized by the Arizona Cardinals as fans of the year and tailgaters of the year. So this is in his blood. It's in his DNA. It's Arizona sports. It's his whole life. And then you look at guys on his coaching staff like Charlie Ragle. Charlie Ragle is the associate head coach. Charlie Ragle was a GA literally drawing up scout cards when I was at ASU.
Wow.
And then he also went to coach at Chaparral High School. And, you know, Jason Mons, his dad was a coach here at Arizona. He was coaching at Chaparral's rival high school in Saguaro for many years. And he was looking just down the street, you know, dreaming one day to be a possible coach at ASU. And so, I mean, I think it makes an incredibly big difference when you have the vast majority of your coaching staff that is looking at their current job like, oh my gosh, this is a total dream come true. And then on top of that, you add an athletic department that is more willing than ever to compensate those guys.
Yeah, it's critical. As you know, Sam Levitt, the quarterback, he went to high school just right down the street here in Portland at West Lynn, and he's been the best freshman this year in the country. Through your quarterback eyes, Rudy, what do you think about Sam Levitt, and what impresses you about his play?
You know, I you know, for me personally, grading quarterbacks and judging quarterbacks is so difficult because there's just so many variables and so many different things that, you know, go along with it. And Sam's had a great year. They've won 10 games. He's when he's been healthy and played, he's been really, really good. He's accurate. He takes care of the football. He throws with good timing. He's got good anticipation. He's able to layer the football and make all the different types of throws that you want. He's athletic. He's mentally tough. He's physically tough. He checks all the boxes. And I think some boxes for me that I think are good too is to a certain extent he's a legacy guy. I mean, his dad played football at a high level. His brother played football at a high level, and he knows what it's like. He knows what the bright lights are like, and I think it comes through when you hear him talk in the media, which is like, you know, he really believes he's living his dream.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. Now this week, you know, they're going to be without Jordan Tyson, their number one target, and I'm just wondering, like, what is practice like this week when you're preparing for a game without your number one target? Like, what are the conversations he's having with coaches and his other receivers to try and get on the same page and get ready for the game on Saturday? How do you do that when you're losing a big weapon?
Yeah, I always found it interesting as a player when you would lose a big-time player, whether it was to an injury or just for any reason, one of your big-time playmakers had to miss a game. And the reason why I find it interesting is because you know the media and you know all the outside sources and all the fans and everybody. It's like, oh, my gosh, what are they going to do? What are they going to do? How are they going to replace this guy? Like, it's big news. And it really is. It does hurt. It hurts your team. But when you're a player, I mean, it's honestly just something that you don't even notice and you don't even think about it because you're just so focused on, I got to get healthy, I got to get treatment, I got to get ready to play, I got to learn this game plan for this week. What's the defense that they run? What are their tendencies? What coverages? What blitzes? What are we going to do with our pass protection? And you're just so focused on all of those things. And then ultimately, as a quarterback, when you come to the line of scrimmage and you're going to run the play that the coaches have called, it's, you know, you're really looking around, you're saying, all right, these are my guys, and I'm going to throw the ball where the coverage dictates that I throw the ball based on the route concept that we have and what my read is supposed to be with this route concept. I think where you'll really, really, really notice it and where you really feel it is when you get into those what I call gotta have it situations. It's, you know, 3rd and 3 and you gotta have it. It's, you know, 3rd and 6, you gotta have it at the end of the game. It's 4th and whatever for the win, and you absolutely have to have it. And those are critical times in a game or critical situations in a game where you're thinking more about people, more about your playmaker than you're thinking about what play should we run. When you get in that situation, you're thinking, okay, who's our best guy? Who's our best matchup? We got to get him the ball instead of thinking, okay, what's our best play for this down and distance? And so I think that's more so when it's going to hurt them. And those types of situations come up in a game, 2, 3, 4, 5 times in a game, a handful of times in a game. And, as we all know from watching sports, when it really comes down to it, it's those couple plays that usually dictate the game.
We're talking with Rudy Carpenter, former Sun Devil here on the Rip City Drive. My favorite player to watch in college right now is Cam Scattaboo. Just his aggressiveness, the way he plays. What's your take on the way he goes about his business?
Yeah, I love it. He's a funny dude. He's a funny guy. I think look, of course he's a great story, right? You hear a story about how he was a zero star coming out of high school. Yeah. Nobody really recruited him. He went to Sacramento State and, did what he could do there. And, he's a 5'9", bowling ball white kid that, like, when you look at him, you're not thinking, oh yeah, that guy plays running back at the Division I level. He's probably great.
Yeah.
You probably look at that guy and be like, what, is he on the wrestling team? Or like,
Yeah.
But he's got a great personality, and I think that, he's really, 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 really been able to get this fan base to really, really love him. The Arizona State fan base is a harsh one. They're a harsh fan base, but if they love you, they love you, and they take care of him. He's done well in the NIL and the marketing space here, and he's doing more every week. But, he has embraced the Valley. It's what we call it here in Arizona. He's embraced Phoenix. It's interesting. Sorry to be long-winded. It's interesting to watch him because when you watch him and you watch our student section at games, it's almost like our student section feels like, this kid is one of us.
Yeah.
He's one of us, like he hangs out with us, he drinks beers with us, he sits at the table at lunchtime with us. And because of that, like I said, he's really endeared himself to the Valley and to our fan base here.
Hey, Rudy, how did you enjoy that 1 year of coaching at Chaparral as offensive coordinator?
That's an interesting question. Chaparral High School in Scottsdale, Arizona it might be the wealthiest high school in Arizona. Public school, I should say, or at least one of them. And so I'm sure you could imagine what kind of parents you're going to have to deal with when you're at like a school where all the kids are driving Mercedes and Range Rovers and, that whole type of situation.
Yeah.
But it was fun to coach. I would say one of the cool things that came out of that year is we had a couple kids go to Division I schools, and a couple of those schools were off the radar schools typically for Arizona. Like, for instance, we had a tight end who I was very close with, who I helped a lot, and he went to UC Davis. Typically, we don't have kids here that go to UC Davis in Arizona, and he had a great career there and played awesome. And then the other big one, our quarterback, Sean Paul Brophy, he went to Incarnate Word, which is another Division I school. And I don't want to take credit for anything those guys do, but both of those guys would probably tell you that they got to those schools and got introduced to those schools based on relationships that I had with those schools, and was able to, get those guys in front of those coaches at said schools. And so that was fun. And the guy just told you about, Sean Paul Brophy, went and played at Incarnate Word and turned that program around. And because of that, Eric Morris, who was the coach at Incarnate Word, ended up hiring Sean Paul as a coach at Incarnate Word, and then brought him to Washington State when he was the OC there, and then ultimately now hired Sean Paul to be the quarterback coach at University of North Texas, which made him the youngest position coach at the Division I level. And in a full circle move, I'm in the agent business, and I'm Sean Paul's agent and represent him in his coaching career. So, that's been good.
That's awesome, man. I think it's great that you had a chance to play a big part in their lives because you've been through the process yourself, man. That's really cool. And you're a smart guy, so I was just curious why you didn't continue on with the coaching, but it sounds like the agent work is probably fun too.
Yeah, my agency, I started it 4 years ago. We got 33 active players in the NFL. We got 8 coaches. I know you didn't ask, but I'm going to tell it.
No, do it.
And so we do pretty good. But to be honest with you, the coaching's very difficult, regardless of what level you're at, college, NFL, high school. It's very difficult, very hard, time consuming. I like to spend a lot of time with my wife and my kids, but what I would say for anybody that's listening is that we as a society need to give our youth coaches and our high school coaches a lot more respect and a lot more credit and treat them with a lot more respect than what I feel like goes on. These are people that work really hard to help your kids play on Friday nights or Saturdays or whenever they play, and these high school coaches are typically doing it for very, very little amount of money.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. What's the name of your agency, Rudy?
Our agency is called Endurance Sports Management.
Endurance Sports Management. That's terrific.
Yeah.
All right. That's great. Hey, Rudy, I always enjoy talking with you, man. You're a smart guy, and I'm glad you're doing well. This has got to be a lot of fun for you to see the Sun Devils succeed. So I look forward to watching the game on Saturday. But thanks for breaking it down, buddy.
My high school teachers would disagree with the smart guy comment, but I appreciate it. I barely graduated ASU too, so I'm able to trick you. So thanks for having me on.
You got it, buddy. I appreciate it. There you go. There's Rudy Carpenter, former Sun Devil, here on the Rip City Drive. Love talking ball with him. I like what he said too, where players. So the Sun Devils go into a game, and many teams face this. They're going into a game where they're not going to have their best receiver, Jordan Tyson. And, of course, as fans and, media types, we're like, oh, man, how are they going to do without that guy? But the players don't even think about it because they jump right back into a brand-new game plan that they have to study and learn, and they get on the practice field, and they're going through all of the different plays and trying to get on the same page with these guys. You don't have time to sit back and think, oh, man, there's no Tyson. What do we do? It's about going through the plays and taking what the defense gives you. But I did like what he said where you really notice it, in situations where you don't have your top wideout or one of your top performers is in the gotta-have-it situations. It could be 4th down and 2. It could be 3rd down and 6. It could be late in the game. You need to move the chains to put yourself in a position to win. Who can step up to be that guy? Very interesting. Gotta-have-it situations. That's where those players make the big difference. But very happy for Sam Levitt out of West Lynn. He's balling out and has a chance to play for a Big 12 championship coming up on Saturday. Iowa State has not won a conference championship since 1912. And the last time ASU was an outright champ was with Jake Plummer back in 96 when they went to the Rose Bowl and lost a heartbreaker to Ohio State thanks to Joe Germain. All right, we'll keep things rolling here on the Rip City Drive. Alex Brink going to stop by at 4:20. Michael Holton in studio at 5:20. Holton on Hoops here on the Rip City Drive. All right, Shacker's playing a little Grim Reaper right now. And the only reason why is because they're on an episode of Beavis and Butthead at one time. Now, this is sad news. Bevo will not be allowed to attend the SEC championship game against Georgia on Saturday. That's unfortunate, man. Bevo should be there. Show some respect to Bevo. Also, did you see this news here that Bill Belichick interviewed for the head coaching job at North Carolina? You know, they're getting rid of Mac Brown for a second time. There's no way that Bill Belichick is going to take a coaching job in college. There's no way. You know, he can interview and they can get some information from him and he can kind of help them, you know, with information on what he would do with the program. Like, it's good due diligence by North Carolina. And maybe it's good for Bill to go through an interview process, but there's no way he's going to take a coaching job in college. No way. He's back to the NFL, and he'll be the number one coach available with all of the openings across the NFL. There'll be multiple teams looking at Bill Belichick as a potential hire. I mean, just go through the teams right now. The Jets, he's not going to the New York Jets. He has been openly critical of the Jets throughout his media tour this year. He hates the Jets. He hates Woody Johnson. He thinks they're buffoons. He's not going to coach the Jets. It's not happening. No chance in HE double hockey sticks that that's going to happen. Now, in the NFC East, I think Philadelphia would have been a possibility, but they're too good now, and they're not going to fire their coach. That would leave the Dallas Cowboys. The Dallas Cowboys. And also, Brian Daboll is coaching for his job right now with the Giants. So you could have the Cowboys or Giants. I would love to see Bill in Dallas. He's got a good relationship with Jerry and his son. Jerry has hired a strong personality before him, Bill Parcells. And I think he would give the hoodie enough freedom to do his job to where Belichick, well, he'd be crazy not to consider it. Now, personally, that's the job I want him to take because that would be fascinating to watch to see how those two, you know, work together. But I think Dallas is a possibility, possibly the Giants if they fire Daboll. Jacksonville is going to be looking for a new head coach. There's no way that Doug Peterson survives this disaster every year. They're awful. And they've got Trevor Lawrence. And the Jags would give him full control to run things the way he wants. But does Bill Belichick really want to go to Jacksonville? I also heard today that Tampa Bay might be a possibility. You know, if Todd Bowles, if they don't make the playoffs, they may make a change at head coach. And we know that the hoodie was a big fan of Baker Mayfield when he came out of college. And maybe he would take the Tampa job. I just think Bill Belichick will take an NFL job. Not a college job. Why take a college job when you can have your pick of multiple jobs in the NFL? And I think Bill has done exactly what we thought he would do. He would go on a media tour, help revive his personality, or at least the way the people view him. And he's been great, whether it's Monday Night Football or it's these different shows he's been on. Like, he's been a great personality. That's the problem with Bill is, like, when he wants to be, he can be very warming, funny, obviously insightful because he knows the game so well. But as a head coach, he comes across as a grumpy curmudgeon, a bitterman. And I get it, man. When you're a coach, the pressure, you're trying to win games, you got to answer questions from the media. You don't want to give up any information. He gets tired of that stuff. But that's fine. He can treat the media however he wants. What you can't do is walk down a hallway and ignore your owner, like we found out in the Dynasty show. He would walk down a hallway, walk past Bob Kraft, and not say a thing. And Kraft thought that was a little bit weird. And it was. So, yeah, Bill Belichick interviewed at North Carolina, but there's no way. There's no way. And then Antonio Brown responded on Twitter and said, yeah, I think his girlfriend is a junior there. Antonio Brown, one of the best follows on social media because he's crazy. And he says crazy things. That is kind of funny, though. I mean, there's only so much time he can spend with the young girl, his young girlfriend, before it's like, yeah, I got to get back into coaching. So we'll wait and see which team he should take over. Which team should it be? How about the Seattle Seahawks in a position now to win the NFC West? How wild is that? Now, the 49ers are done, like D-U-N done. They're done. This season's basically over for the 49ers, and now you've got the Seahawks sitting atop the division. One game in front of both the Cardinals and Rams, and 2 games in front of the 49ers, who are in the basement with 5 wins. Crazy. They've been decimated by injuries. They're a mess, and the Seahawks look pretty good right now. They're 4-1 away from home, too. They have a losing record at home, and they're 4-1 on the road. That's crazy. The NFC South is a horrific division. Tampa and Atlanta tied at 6-6, and the winner will get a home playoff game. In the NFC North, we have a big game tonight. The Packers sitting at 9-3. They're behind both Minnesota, who's 10-2, and Detroit 11-1 in the division. Big game for Green Bay. Big game for Detroit as they continue to try and solidify and lock up home field advantage throughout the playoffs. And as I've said from weeks ago, Detroit is playing like the best team in football right now. But if they get home field and get the bye, and then you've got to go through Detroit to get to the Super Bowl, good luck with that, because they're so much better in the dome on that fast field with their playmakers. They got good skill position players. Dan Campbell has developed an identity. They're a physically tough football team. They run the football well, great offensive line, and their quarterback is in the MVP conversation. Jared Goff is accurate, smart, and getting the job done. Right now, it appears that Philadelphia and Detroit could be on a crash course for the NFC Championship game. How good of a game would that be? And Philadelphia right now is on fire, playing great football. 10-2, and they've won 8 straight. They've probably got the most talented roster in football. They're getting it done defensively, and they've got balance now with Saquon Barkley. They're running the football, and Jalen Hurts is doing enough. The Eagles look like a legitimate title contender right now. I think the NFC is down to 2 teams. Green Bay outside shop, Minnesota outside shop, but right now Detroit and Philadelphia head and shoulders above the rest. Philly with 8 straight wins. Detroit has won 10 straight. Minnesota 5 straight, and Green Bay 3 straight. I think it's safe to say that the NFC champion will come from that group of 4. Green Bay, Minnesota, Detroit, and Philadelphia. And then you got the other teams who will get in, but can't measure up to those 4, especially Detroit and Philadelphia. The AFC right now, Kansas City still atop the conference with a record of 11-1, but Buffalo is breathing down their neck. They've got the tiebreak. They're just 1 game back in the loss column. They're 10-2, and Buffalo's won 7 straight. They're on fire. Spinal Tap. Beavis and Butthead. I remember this episode. Yeah, 1993. I lost a lot of brain cells watching this program, but it was fun. All right, we'll keep things rolling here on the Rip City Drive. Dave Deckard with some great insight on the Trailblazers I'll share with you, and then we'll hear from Alex Brink at 4:20. All right, what's going on, my friends? 4 o'clock. Trailblazers in action tomorrow night. The Utah Jazz are in town. Tip at 7. Rip City Drive live from Moda at 3. Chris Burkhardt will have Blazers game day at 5. And it's all here in your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. It's presented by Coors Light. Championship weekend in college football. 3 games or win, and you're on to the playoff. The losers will be out, starting with Friday night's game, UNLV and Boise State. The Broncos favored by 4. That game's at 5 on Fox. Oregon meets Penn State in the Big Ten title game. 5 o'clock kick Saturday. You can watch it on CBS. The Ducks are a 3.5-point favorite. We got a great one on Thursday Night Football. Prime, the 9-3 Green Bay Packers meet the 11-1 Detroit Lions from Ford Field. The Lions are favored by 3. Elsewhere, the Cowboys going to be without Zach Martin for the remainder of the season due to an ankle injury. And UCLA is firing offensive coordinator Eric Bieniemy after one season. Alex Brink will stop by at 4:20, and Michael Holton in studio at 5:20 for some Holton on Hoops. All right, this reminds me of like mid-'90s, hitting the Upfront Bar and Grill on a Saturday night for a little dance time. That awkward age range from like 19 to 20, 18 to 21 when you want to go out, but you don't have the fake ID, so you have to go to places like Upfront. And then when we were done with the little dance party, we'd hit Delta Park on the way home and stop at Sherry's. But we can't do that anymore because Sherry's shut down. Everything's changing. It's not fun. Michael Shacker was kind enough to lend his dog to me for a segment, though. I've got Dino bumping around the studio with me. I can't win right now. I finally solved the lumbar pain in my back just by adjusting the mattress with the adjustable base. It had been bothering me for about, maybe about 2 months, 6 weeks. I would wake up with lumbar pain, and I don't typically have back pain. So I was frustrated. It was starting to really annoy me. And I think it was having a bigger impact than I realized until I adjusted my mattress to I'm more upright now. I sleep on my back. I'm a weirdo. I don't roll on my side. I don't sleep on my stomach. I fall asleep in one position, and I wake up in the same position on my back. But, man, ever since I adjusted the mattress, I'm waking up feeling good. Rested, too. I didn't realize how much the back pain was causing issues until, 4 or 5 days ago when I made the adjustment, and now I wake up feeling more refreshed. But then I got sick, so I'm battling through illness right now. Thankfully, I had the antibiotics sitting in my drawer waiting for a rainy day like I had a few days ago. So I'm grinding through that a little bit, but I'm happy that my back feels good. So there you go. That's where I'm at. I'm hanging out with Dino in the studio, under the weather a bit, but grinding through. We talked earlier with Rudy Carpenter, former ASU quarterback. They haven't won an outright championship in conference since '96. And the Iowa State Cyclones haven't won a championship since 1912. And yet these two teams are facing off for the conference championship on Saturday, which is bizarre. Neither team was picked before the season to be at the top of the conference. Boise State and UNLV, no surprise here in the Mountain West, they were by far the two best teams in conference throughout the entire year. And you've got a great dual threat quarterback going up against Ashton Genty. You've got Oregon taking on Penn State. No one even thought this matchup was going to happen because no one foresaw Michigan beating Ohio State for the 4th straight year. So now we got a matchup in the Big Ten title game that's not what we expected even, a week ago. So that's weird. Texas, Georgia matchup in the SEC. Both teams are in, just like Oregon and Penn State, so there's no pressure to have to win to get into the playoff. I have thought throughout the year that Penn State is mostly fraudulent because they can't really move the football. Very good defensive team, very good pass rush. The problem is their offense. You can't rely on Aller or their offense to score points on a regular basis. How will they match up? Can they run the football against Oregon? If there's one weakness in the Oregon attack, it would be their run defense, which isn't great. But I just can't see Penn State being able to move the football enough to win that game. meaning it would require multiple duck miscues, turnovers, I think, for Penn State to win. Texas and Georgia, I don't know what to think anymore. You know, Georgia's an enigma to me because I know in their front seven, they're like the best in the country, and their defensive line is built different than anyone else in the country. But I also know that their offense is really problematic right now. They're not getting good play from Carson Beck. He's been victimized by the fact that the offensive line has been a train wreck. It's underperformed. They've had injuries. So their offense is hit or miss. But then I saw them go into Austin and just physically dominate that football game. They put up 30 points because mostly their defense gave their offense a short field. So we'll see how things shake out on Saturday. Texas is weird. I know that they've got talent. Their defensive line is legit, and they probably have the best offensive line in the country. But then why did they get dominated by Georgia in that game at home? And Texas is a weird team because they really haven't beaten anybody on the year. They got the win at Texas A&M, which is somewhat impressive. And they beat Oklahoma, but the only really good team that they played was Georgia, and they got smacked. So I think it's a big, big game for Georgia. The problem is that Quinn Ewers, a good quarterback for Texas, highly productive, he's not a runner. He's not a runner like Arch Manning is. So, and we saw last week that Georgia's defense struggled with the running quarterback from Georgia Tech. So what do you do there if you're Texas? It's going to be fun to watch Steve Sarkisian and, going up against Kirby Smart once again. Kirby Smart, crazy indeed, smart, great defensive mind. I'm looking forward to seeing those two guys, scheme against one another. And then we got the ACC game that no one really cares about. SMU is playing for their playoff lives because I think we all agree that if they win, they're in. But if they lose, they're out because of Bama. And it sucks to be SMU to know you're playing an extra game this week because you're in the conference championship. But if you lose, it's going to cost you because the committee's going to pick Alabama over SMU. And, that's going to be the big debate. I think the other thing to watch is going to be the battle between, the 6 and the 7 seeds. Like who's going to get, 6 and 7? Who's going to get the home playoff games in the first round? How are they going to slot Notre Dame? Will they get the number 5 seed if chalk plays out? Like, how's this all going to play out? It's going to be great, though, from Saturday, because what we have on Saturday is we got all the conference title games, including Friday night's game, and then we'll go right into Sunday morning for the selection show when the teams are going to be named. And, Lane Kiffin's out on his, media tour right now making the case for Ole Miss. He's upset about everything because he knows his team's on the outside looking in right now. SMU knows that if they lose that conference title game, they're probably screwed. South Carolina knows that they're on the outside looking in. And Alabama's sitting there going, man, we just want Clemson to win to make sure that we're in. And if SMU, loses the game, are we going to, what's that debate? How's it going to play out? It's going to be fun to watch. But my guess would be SMU, to get into the playoff, has to win that game against Clemson. Because if the committee, because of the brand bias that exists and the biases in the polls, we all know. I mean, what do you think is going to happen? Let's say SMU loses a heartbreaker to Clemson, like on a last-second field goal. What do you think the committee's going to do? They really going to put SMU in over Bama? They're going to keep Bama out and not give SEC, the conference, a 4th team in because of SMU? That's not going to happen. What world are we living in? Come on. They're going to pick SMU over Bama. I don't think so. I think SMU knows that too. So that's what you tell your players. Just go out and win the game. Go out and beat Clemson. This is not Clemson with Deshaun Watson, for crying out loud. This is not an unbeatable Clemson team. Go out and beat Clemson and then leave no doubt. Leave no doubt. And just end them. That's how you do that. But they probably won't beat Clemson. That's the problem. I trust Clemson in a game like this a lot more than I do SMU because Clemson's been there time and again. And even though Dabo Swinney's annoying, he's got big game experience. He's one of the best coaches in the game. Even if he does say ridiculous things sometimes. And he even came out recently and tried to backtrack on what he said about, the day that they start paying players is the day I'm going to shut it down. And, of course, that wasn't true because where else are you going to go making over $10 million a year to do exactly what you love to do? These coaches that complain, like who was it recently? Who was the buffoon? Oh, yeah, Brian Kelly down at LSU. Whining about players. It's all about money now and getting the most money that you can get when it comes to recruiting because he's been losing out on recruits who've been flipping last second to go elsewhere. Like Bryce Underwood, the QB that's going to Michigan now. He got a higher dollar from Michigan than he did LSU. But it's just really, really delicious to hear a coach like Brian Kelly complain about players deciding to go elsewhere because they have a chance to make more money. Brian Kelly's been doing that his whole career. He left Cincinnati so he could go to Notre Dame to make more money, and then he went to LSU because he had a chance to make more money. Yeah, that's what it's called, Kelly. It's like, please shut up. Stop faking your accent, stop whining, and stop complaining about good things like players capitalizing off of their talents and their name and making more money. And Brian Kelly's a fraud, too. I don't like him. Total nonsense. Please shut up, Brian Kelly. And, we talked to Rudy Carpenter. He's right. The young coaches, unlike guys like Brian Kelly and freaking Dabo Swinney, these young coaches like Dan Lanning and Kenny Dillingham who are embracing the new world of college football, the transfer portal, the NIL, and they're encouraging kids to get everything that they can, that they're actually out there campaigning to get more money into the program so their kids can get paid. Those are the coaches that are going to win. It doesn't matter whether you like the system or not. You better adjust and embrace and adapt or you're done. And Brian Kelly whining about losing players because it's all about the money. It's like, gosh, yeah, it is all about the money. These players want to have a chance to make as much money as possible by playing college football. I don't have a problem with that. And you shouldn't either. But just do a better job of recruiting and do a better job of embracing the system and don't lose these players to teams like Michigan and you got nothing to whine about. And he's a fraud. Brian Kelly's a fraud. When you show up and start changing your accent to match the people you're around, you're an idiot. And we all know that about Brian Kelly. Good coach, kind of a clown, but please shut up. I don't like the whining. Hearing people who make that type of money whine about things, it's like, please, just shut up. Oh, my gosh, whatever. And then you got Kenny Dillingham on the other side wearing sweatshirts supporting the Sun Devil NIL collective during football games, encouraging people to buy season tickets and go out and, donate to make sure they can keep their team because he wants his players to be taken care of. He understands what's going on. Anyways, yeah, Brian Kelly, fraud. He is a fraud. Not a fan of him. Dan Lanning's embraced it pretty well. He's embraced social media. He's embraced NIL. He's got the Oregon machine behind him. He doesn't say crazy things, and he continues to remind people that everything he wants is right there in Eugene. Boom. What else do you want? And he's embracing it. He's not whining or complaining about players having power. He just goes out there and does the best job he can on the recruiting trail. And he's just lapping competition right now. He was dominant. What a recruiting class that was. Yeah, Oregon's doing a good job. Dan Lanning's doing a good job. These younger guys who adapt and embrace instead of whine and complain, those are the ones who are making headways. All right, we'll get back to Alex Brink. He's going to join the show next. We'll get his take on what's going up at WSU. Is Jake Dickert good to stay? What about the quarterback Mateer? He's in the portal. Is he going to Oklahoma to join his offensive coordinator? What does he think about the championship weekend? What about the rankings that came out? Does he have a problem with Bama being 11 ahead of Miami, Ole Miss, and South Carolina? We'll find out next. And then Michael Holton will join us in studio at 5:20. You got the Rip City Drive. All right, joining us now on the Rip City Drive is our college football and NFL insider, former Coug, and now with E4 Sports. It's Alex Brink. And Alex, it's great to have you back on the show and talk some ball ahead of championship Saturday. Let's start with the Cougs, though, because there's some news. Offensive coordinator Ben Arbuckle is on his way to Oklahoma. The big question I have is, do you think John Mateer will follow with the news that Jackson Arnold is entering the transfer portal?
Well, like you mentioned, that Arnold news maybe kind of threw a little wrench in it. My original thinking, I think in general, Coach Arbuckle did not recruit John Mateer. So I don't know that it's that type of relationship, say like when Cam Ward and Eric Morris went from Incarnate Word to Washington State, right, as a package deal. And seen that happen a couple times in college football. I don't know if it's that one-to-one. But look, like John Mateer is one of the best quarterbacks in college football this year. He's young. He obviously has a relationship with, Ben Arbuckle, and I would assume Oklahoma has a pretty good-sized NIL budget. So I think it's certainly going to be a part of the conversation. Just from what I know about the whole situation is that, John Mateer is very thankful for the opportunity he got at Washington State out of high school, a three-star under-recruited player. So, I think he feels like Jake Dicker and those guys are going to, try and do their best to put him in a great position. And but we're in a whole new world of college football. You know what I mean? Like it's just, there's so many things that go into it, so many factors, and some of the numbers and money that gets thrown around and some of the opportunity. It's hard to pass up.
No question. You were just up there in Pullman for signing day. How did things go?
It was good. Washington State, I think signed a really good class. I was really impressed with Jake Dickert and their staff, considering they lost their offensive coordinator, fired their defensive coordinator. They were able to have all their original signees pen to paper Wednesday morning, no issues, which I think kind of speaks to that culture, right? Speaks to the type of athlete they're trying to get. They're not going to compete for the same guys that other schools are gonna go after, but they know what they want and they know how to go get them. And I think from that piece, it was pretty impressive.
All right, Jake Dickert, do you think he's locked in? Is he going to stay?
I think he's locked in. I mean, I would be surprised that a guy would fire his defensive coordinator and then leave for another job after that. My indication would be that means he's trying to continue to build something, okay. Which is the vibe that I got.
That's cool. I like Jake Dickert. I want good things for him, and I know you're a big fan of his, but I think he's really impressive, Alex. So I think it's great if he stays, and I think he'll continue to do good things there. I think he's one of the best young coaches in the country.
Right, I agree 100%, and which is why we all have to, as Coug fans, we have to appreciate that it may not be long for Washington State, but for now, while we have him, we should be very, very thankful. He's also doing an incredible job of championing the university through this kind of like, all the realignment, NIL portal era. Like I think he's setting a good blueprint for what it takes to be successful at Washington State in this world. And I think we should be thankful for that.
All right, one more question on the Cougs. I've seen projections for the Holiday Bowl. Any idea on where they're going to end up?
I've heard Holiday Bowl and Vegas Bowl. I think the most important part of any of this conversation is the three potential matchups are Clemson, Texas A&M, or Miami.
Yes.
So Cougs are going to get a game against a marquee opponent in a really high-quality bowl game to be able to finish out their season, which obviously didn't end great with 3 straight losses in the regular season, but a chance to finish on a big-time high note against a marquee program.
I think the most important part of this discussion is Alex Brink ending up in Las Vegas or San Diego and not El Paso, Texas.
I think that's a really important part of it too. We'll just hope that Alex Brink's golf club can get on the airplane with him.
Dude, you got to make sure you take him. No question about it. The biggest controversy, Alex, with the latest college football playoff rankings from Tuesday is Alabama being slotted at number 11 ahead of Miami, Ole Miss, and South Carolina. What jumped out at you with the rankings?
I think there's I don't know that it's unfair that that's the way it played out. I mean, I think Alabama, they have a bad loss. They have some great wins. Miami's, it's kind of the old, what we used to experience, right, with the 4-team playoff when teams would have that late season loss, right? It seems to affect you in an outsized way compared to an early season loss. And I would argue that for Miami, that loss to Syracuse compared to, say, Alabama's loss to Vanderbilt, if we're comparing losses, that's part of why it feels worse, right?
Yeah.
Because it happened later in the season. It's more top of mind. I guess same conversation for Ole Miss, frankly. And I think, everybody's kind of doing the comparison game. And again, the committee is according to them, right, they're kind of looking at, some of these wins that Alabama has and over maybe say Ole Miss and ultimately South Carolina. But I would also say for someone who's not an SEC homer that they all kind of have an argument, but they also all have some holes in their arguments.
Would it frustrate you if SMU loses the ACC title game and they choose Bama over SMU?
No, not necessarily. Because, again, I think, SMU is, and I don't think this is unfair necessarily, SMU is going to get held to a little bit higher standard, right, maybe than a team like Alabama based on, I think, some of the schedule. And that, the ACC is probably a weaker conference, I think, across the board.
Oh, yeah.
And, a late season loss and, if you have that late season loss and you're not sure, you don't pass the eye test quite like some of these other teams, like, I don't know. It'd be, I don't disagree with it. It's the same way, obviously, like Boise has to win regardless. But if Boise was in that conversation, like Boise's got to win. They got to win as many games. They got to go pretty much undefeated. They got to go undefeated to be in this conversation. Like, I think that's kind of part of it.
No doubt. We're talking with Alex Brink, former Cougies, our college football and NFL insider. Look, not much surprises me in sports these days, especially with the parity. But Ohio State losing to Michigan at home is a 3-touchdown favorite. Like, how does that happen?
I mean, yeah, I was for sure based on how Michigan's been playing this season. I think what I would say just in general is that, Michigan is a incredible, wins the national title, right? And then they're a team that didn't all of a sudden, although they lost a lot of their top tier players and marquee players, you didn't just unload an entire roster necessarily. So there's good football players on that roster. They have not been playing their best this year. A big part of that, I think, was the quarterback position offensively was a big part of it, and then defensively, I just frankly think they weren't playing their best and, again, lost some key pieces. But I say that to say that in a rivalry game, right, everybody can get motivated for it. It's your chance to shock the world when you're having a year like Michigan's having. And, like, if you have enough talent, you can maybe make it happen, particularly on a day where Ohio State came in and just didn't play their best, and haven't played their best against Michigan for 4 years or so. So, again, I think it's a testament to rivalry weekend, testament to, a roster that's not as bad as maybe the record states. And then ultimately, Ohio State probably sleepwalking into it a little bit.
Yeah, no doubt. This may have never occurred before Baker Mayfield, but did you ever have anyone try to plant a flag at midfield up in Pullman, and then you guys got into a rumble? Do you remember anything like that happening when you played?
No, none of that nonsense ever happened, and I don't know that it did ever happen until Baker did it. To be totally honest with you, and kudos to Baker for starting a trend.
No pepper spray? You've never been pepper sprayed on the field after a game?
So I was watching. I don't know if you probably were too. I was watching it live, and like all of a sudden, like you see guys rubbing their eyes and going to the bench, and it's like, did they pepper spray them? Like, what is going on in the world? I'm sure you saw it too, but the cut up somebody made of all the flag plantings and fights after the weekend. Classic.
Yeah, it is incredible. We're talking with Alex Brink here on the Rip City Drive. How do you see the matchup between Oregon and Penn State?
I think it's going to be good in the sense that you obviously got a conference championship game. Penn State, all of a sudden has a lot on the line when they probably, before it was kind of like they were going to get slotted. They were going to get slotted in for a first round home game, and then now if they beat Oregon, obviously they can skip that and get into that top four. And so they got a lot to play for. And Oregon, from Oregon's standpoint, I think they're going to need to play their best football, and honestly, I think they will. I think beating up on UW like that gets some really good momentum. I think the difference in this game to me is going to be the Oregon defense. I think their ability to rush the passer, Penn State's out without one of their best offensive linemen. Oregon's ability to rush the passer, I think will probably be a difference in this game. If you can get Drew Aller a little bit off his game, like off platform, rush him a little bit, he'll turn the ball over. And so I think that is an opportunity for Oregon's defense. The offense is just, they feel like they're just a machine, in all honesty, right? And so I feel like that consistency will continue.
All right, what do you think about this rematch with Texas and Georgia in the SEC title game? The big surprise in the first matchup in Austin was the way Georgia dominated that Texas offensive line, which might be the best in the country. How do you see this one going down?
Yeah, I think when we went into that game, I kind of said, hey, I think Georgia's a more physical football team than Texas is, because, everybody wants to say Texas is coming back and wants to say they have it, but, it hasn't been it had not been proven against the best. I think Georgia exposed that a little bit. That all being said, Tech put something on tape, right, against Georgia and last week, and it'll be interesting to see what Texas and that coaching staff takes from that film on how they can attack how they can attack Georgia, because Texas definitely has the tools to do it, the skill players, quarterbacks, like the whole thing. And if they get them in the right position, I think Texas has a chance against this Georgia team that, to me, prior to the Georgia Tech game, I thought Georgia was really trending up. And then when I watched that game, it just feels like something's off there. And I think part of that, too, is Carson Beck is such a wild card, good and bad, that if the Texas defense, right, can force some turnovers, now all of a sudden Texas gets momentum. So I'm kind of leaning towards Texas in this one.
I know both of you and I both are big fans of ASU with what Kenny Dillingham has done. They got Sam Levitt playing quarterback, best freshman in the country, someone that you know really well. The issue here is they're going to be without Jordan Tyson, who's one of the best receivers in the country and by far his number one target. How much of an adjustment will that be for Levitt going into this game not having Tyson?
Yeah, it's a change for sure when you've built a rapport with a guy that you really feel like you can trust. And I think also for the coaching staff, you can see the way they use Tyson in the play action pass game. He's kind of the shot guy, the guy who goes downfield. So they're going to have to replace that. And I don't know exactly where they go there. The one thing I will say is the advantage the offense has, both for Marcus Arroyo, the play caller, and for Sam as a quarterback, is because the running game is so good and so dynamic, and because Sam is a great athlete in his own right, they have a lot of different ways they can attack Iowa State in this game, right? It doesn't have to be the vertical stretch game, play action pass with not having Jordan Tyson. They're going to run the football no matter what. They can get into quick pass and RPO, and then use quarterback run, and I think that gives them enough of a toolbox.
Have you worked with Rocco Beck, the quarterback from Ohio State?
I have not, no.
I like both coaches. Matt Campbell and Kenny Dillingham, very similar, young and committed to their programs. You can tell that they have good connections with their staff and their players. Very impressive men.
Oh man, the job that Matt Campbell's done at Iowa State is next level. You're right. I mean, like, it's actually, people on the West Coast don't realize it's a really well resourced program. They draw really well to that stadium. I mean, they fill that thing up, and it reminds me of Eugene a little bit, right? With the University of Oregon, it's got the similar vibes as far as like the fan experience. But it's not an easy place to win by any means, and he has really done a great job recruiting. Again, knowing his profile of athlete he wants to get, kind of building those teams, and couldn't be more impressed with Matt Campbell.
All right, I wanted to ask you this. I've been dying to ask you this since Monday, but what did you think about that touchdown pass from Bo Nix? Monday Night Football, the 93-yarder against the Browns inverted Tampa 2.
Just elite, when you see the kind of back angle, right, kind of as it's coming at you, you see, his ability to really drive the football, the anticipation of it. And, I mean, how fun is it? I mean, just honestly, for Bo Nix, I think back to I met him at Elite 11 as a high school senior. He goes to Auburn, obviously watched the game against Oregon, right off the bat. Then you track his career kind of through Auburn and some of the challenges there, and he gets that opportunity in Oregon, and boy, it just feels like he got so much confidence out of it, learned a lot, and he gets in a great situation with Sean Payton, who's really coaching him up.
What do you think about him as a person? He seems like a really good guy, grounded, mature, for being a rookie. Like, what was your take on just being around him and getting a chance to know him?
He was the same as as an 18-year-old. Like he was exactly like that. I mean, just, really humble, really, you could tell he cared a lot, about playing the position and being a leader and did things right, on and off the field. So, no surprise that that's kind of carried through. And obviously you can tell when he's in front of the media and he's dealing with those sort of things, that really stands out.
I wasn't exactly thrilled when they drafted Bo Nix. I didn't really know what to expect. I had my question marks like you or anyone else, but he's exceeding my expectation. Is he playing better than what you envisioned in year one?
Yeah, he is, candidly. I think very much so. And I think what you're starting to see, and this will be an interesting trend to track, is a guy like Bo Nix and, say, Jaden Daniels versus maybe a guy like, Anthony Richardson or something like that. Is that due to the amount of snaps they got in college, right? Is it due to how much football they've seen, all the pictures, all the ups, all the downs, all the stuff, right, that it takes to play quarterback, because it's so hard at the NFL level to do it, and it's really hard to learn it on the fly, right? And so, it'll be interesting to, again, track and kind of put it together. It's like, is that a difference maker? Like, guys that have played a lot of football in college and had a lot of snaps are the ones that are finding more success early in their NFL careers.
All right. If Kevin Warren reached out to you and, general manager for the Bears, they've got to find a new head coach, and he was to ask you, like, what type of coach should we be looking for? What would you advise him to do with Caleb Williams, and now they've got to find a new head coach to take over for Matt Eberflus? What should they be looking for there, Alex?
Yeah, I think they definitely need an offensive-minded head coach that can connect with Caleb, and I think they have some pieces on that roster. Again, I'm biased because of my time around Kyle Shanahan and the guys from that kind of Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan coaching tree, but it's hard to argue with the success those guys have offensively. Plus, I think the idea that they can create a system that runs the football effectively, I think would have high value playing in Chicago and help the quarterback in the play action pass game. So that's kind of where I lean. I also, you look at the NFL these days and you think about kind of the people that are having success, and it is it's a lot of younger guys. It's a lot of guys that whether there's the versions that have played like DeMeco Ryans or Dan Campbell, then you have the guys that kind of grew up as like, again, in that Shanahan system as like coaches, right? Whether it's LaFleur or Mike McDaniel or even Kevin O'Connell at Minnesota. And so, that's the question I don't know the answer to, right? Is it the former player that can connect with the players, or is it more of one of those guys that's been a part of a really, really good system?
All right, E4 Sports, you guys are continuing to grow, Alex. We're at the end of football season now, so what do you guys have going for your off-season football development and training?
You're right. A lot of things going at E4 Sports. I mean, if you look at e4sports.com and you have a young athlete that, wants to get into training, strength, speed training, basketball, baseball, softball, all sorts of things. But, our core where we started was in off-season football development and helping young football players in the state of Oregon and in Southwest Washington. Myself and my business partner, Ryan DePaulo, both played college football. And, we really want to develop football athletes here and have seen, just some incredible stories of athletes that have come through our program and are playing, on Saturdays and Sundays now. And so we're starting our off-season football development. A lot of it ramps up in January. We'll have our off-season 7-on-7 teams for fifth graders through high school. We're having teams in Vancouver, Portland metro area, even out to Bend. So check out e4sports.com if you're interested in that program. Then we'll have position-specific training. So think, quarterbacks all the way through linemen. We'll have opportunities on the weekends for athletes to train with really high-quality coaches and work on their skills as they get ready for, their next football season. So check out e4sports.com, click on the football tab. You'll get to start seeing all of our programs popping up over the next month as we head into January, and then we're going to rip it going into 2025.
All right, thanks, buddy. Alex Brink, E4 Sports. Check them out at e4sports.com. You can email team at e4sports.com. Alex, appreciate it, buddy. Enjoy the weekend, and we'll catch up soon.
Thanks so much, Chad.
Love talking ball with Alex. Championship weekend. That was a great throw from Bo Nix. They had no business winning that football game, and yet they won that football game because Jameis Winston contributed not one but two pick sixes. Thank you, Jameis. I appreciate that. All right, we'll keep things rolling. Michael Holton's going to join me in studio coming up at 5:20, so we'll cover all things Trailblazers. And then tomorrow, Rip City Drive live from Moda Center at 3. Chris Burkhardt will have game day at 5. Tip-off at 7. The Utah Jazz are in town. I can't believe this. Beverly Hills Cop, the original, turns 40 years old today. That was 9 years old when that came out back in 1984. That's
one of
crazy.
the first movies I've seen on a VCR.
It's a darn good one, too. Beverly Hills Cop and the second one are two of my favorite movies from my younger days. That was when Eddie Murphy was white hot. He had done 48 Hours and then Beverly Hills Cop, and then he just became a superstar, megastar.
Yeah, the reboot that came out recently was good.
It was exceptional. The reboot was terrific. I watched it. I was concerned, but I'm glad they did it, much like when Stallone made Rocky Balboa. The reason why it was important to do the reboot for Beverly Hills Cop is because Beverly Hills Cop 3 sucked, and it shouldn't have been done. It was a disaster. So they waited years and years and years. They did the reboot, and it was terrific. I enjoyed it. I would watch it again.
And they tried to reboot Fletch with another actor. Well, it didn't work.
What are you doing? I can tell you right now, it's like, you cannot have, like the remake of Karate Kid, bad idea. The remake of Fletch, bad idea, because there are certain movies where the character and the person who played the character, vital to the success. Vital. It'd be like trying to have another Beverly Hills Cop without Axel Foley, without Murphy. That'd be impossible. It wouldn't work. All right, I just called my mom to make sure my dad was still alive. So you just raise your hand if you can relate to this. If you have parents who are older and they do ridiculous things, and then you're worried about their safety and well-being. So my dad, let's see, how old is my dad now? Mid-70s? I can't remember the exact age. He's like 75 or 76. But like any person who's getting older, like his balance is not exactly what it used to be. Now, he's still in great health. He's been blessed with good genetics from my Nana and from my papa, but his balance is not what it used to be. And so he needed to get up on the roof to take off the moss and some of the brush and the leaves that had collected on top. And for obvious reasons, my mom did not want him on the roof. It didn't want him on the roof. And I can understand that. It's like, no, you're not going up on the roof. Your balance isn't what it is. I don't want you to die. I don't want you on the roof. And I think she threatened to divorce him or leave him or never talk to him again, something like that. Well, anyways, and I told him, I said, Dad, I said, I know that it's Blazer season. I know I work a lot, but just let's pick any of these days when I'm not working, when I don't have anything going on, I will come over and I will do it. So you don't have to get up on the roof. I have no problems. He's like, well, you're so busy and I don't want to take you away from what you're doing. And, it's going to be raining a lot too. So I've got, it's got to be a day where it's not raining. I'm like, whatever. You're trying to tell an old person, they get stubborn. And of course, guys don't like to have other people tell them what they can and cannot do, even as they get older, because they still feel like they can do it. So his solution, he bought some type of harness that he attached to the house and that he wore. He had a full-on body harness that he wore. So if he slipped and fell, he would dangle in the air and not crash to the ground and die. That was his solution. And so I called my mom today. I was like, don't let him go on the roof. Don't let him do it. Well, your dad, you need to call and tell him because he's not going to listen to what I say. I said, well, tell him that you'll leave him. Make sure he doesn't go on the roof. Well, of course, none of that worked, and he goes up on the roof. So I just called to make sure he didn't die, and apparently he did not. He took care of his business wearing a harness. I mean, can you – whatever. Dad, you think that harness is really going to get the job done if you fall? Anyways, it's one of those deals where, like, the front side of the house, if you were to take a tumble off, you'd probably survive, but the back side, because there's a drop-off, it's much farther. But there you go. Harness with a rope, some type of weird contraction that he had on. But it worked. He didn't die, didn't slip and fall, and didn't have to put the harness to use. Oh, my goodness. And then my daughter didn't feel well. She didn't go to school today. And I think this is pretty funny because she's really upset right now. She didn't go to school because she's under the weather and, like I am. So that's no problem. Like, if you need to take the day off and you want to stay home, that's fine. Well, the funny thing is that one of her teachers FaceTimed her during the day and was like, where are you and why aren't you here? The teacher apparently bought Taco Bell for the entire classroom, and she got all the items that Kaylee likes, but she was not there to enjoy it. So she's upset. And I said, hey, when you snooze, you lose. When you choose to stay home, these are the things that happen, especially in the month of December when teachers are in an unusual good mood and in a giving type spirit. So she missed out on Taco Bell. I don't know how much she spent on the entire classroom, but it had to be thousands of dollars. I took two kids, my daughter and her friend, through the drive-through the other night because they wanted to make a late-night border run. It was like $27 for two of them. A little bit different than the 59, 79, and 99 menu. It's insanity. 503-248-0620 is your telephone number. Let's go out to Jackie in Sherwood. Jackie, I appreciate the call. What's on your mind?
Hey, Chad. Happy Thursday.
You too. Nice to hear from you.
Thank you. My mom's 91, and she lives by herself. And I see her a couple times a week, but she just can't wait to have stuff done. So she's getting on the stepladder to see what's in these boxes in the closet. It's a lot to keep them, from doing dumb things.
No, it's ridiculous. The last thing, I would suggest that for a 90-year-old lady, that the most dangerous thing in the house would be a stepladder, for crying out loud. Just what you need, Mom, at 91 is to get up on a stepladder. You can fall and break your hip. Yeah. It's absurd. But in their mind, they're like, I've got this. I've got this. It's like, what are you doing? You're getting up on a roof with a harness. He wore a harness, for crying out loud, and attached it to the house so if he fell, he wouldn't just go crashing to the ground. It's beyond dumb. Beyond dumb.
Crazy.
And he's been taking falls. He tumbles now because his balance isn't the same. So you're going to get on a surface that's tilted? Oh, my gosh.
No. Well, here's another thing that I've done is I've disabled the battery cables so that she can't go and drive if she wants to get her hair done.
Good.
So.
Thank God. Yes, Mom, I will take you to get your hair done. Mom, I will take you.
Yes.
Jeez. I'm glad I'm not the only one dealing with the nonsense.
No.
If you want, call me up over the weekend. I'll head over with you, and we can remove all step ladders from her house. That's absurd.
All right, thanks.
You got it, Jackie. Same thing, step ladders. I'm 91. I'm going to get up and see. I need to see what's in these boxes. No, you don't. Those boxes have probably been sitting there for 30 years. You didn't care what was in them before. What do you care for now? Unbelievable. My Nana was the same way, stubborn. And she would get mad at me, too, because if I bought things for her or spent money on her, she would tell me she would never spend time with me again. If you do that again, I'm not going to spend time with you. Okay, Nana. All right, we'll keep things rolling. Michael Holden's going to come in studio at 5:20 and talk some hoop. Rip City Drive with Chad doing. We'll take a look at some of the conference championship games coming up next. All right, Thursday Night Football is coming up in 15 minutes on Prime. You got the 9-3 Green Bay Packers who will meet the 11-1 Detroit Lions from Ford Field. Detroit favored by 3. The Trailblazers back in action tomorrow night. The Utah Jazz are in town. Tip-off at 7. I'll be live from Moda with the Rip City Drive at 3. Chris Burkhardt has game day at 5, and it's all here in your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio, presented by Coors Light. Championship weekend in college football. UNLV and Boise State. Friday night, 5 on Fox. Broncos favored by 4. Winner of the game is in the playoff. Loser is out. Oregon will meet Penn State Saturday at 5 on CBS. Big Ten Championship. Ducks are favored by 3.5. If Oregon wins, they'll be the 1 seed in the tournament. Elsewhere, Cowboys are going to be without Zach Martin for the remainder of the season due to ankle surgery, and UCLA has fired Eric Bieniemy, offensive coordinator, after 1 season. All right, Scotty Bethune has chimed in. He says, hey, Chad, we live on property with my parents so we can make sure they are alive. That's exactly what I'm talking about. He says, my biggest fear is coming home and finding them both on their backs like turtles in the driveway. Exactly. My dad should not be strapping a harness on and then tying it to the house so he can get up on the roof to remove moss and leaves. It's like, you do realize, here's the other part that's frustrating. I know that he comes from a generation where spending money's like, one of the, 7 deadly sins. Like, heaven forbid we spend a few dollars. But he's not poor. He's got a few bucks. You might want to invest to make sure you don't put yourself in that type of situation. And then we got the call from Jackie. Her mom's got the step stool at 91 years old. You don't need that. And you don't care what's in those boxes that are sitting up there, above the mantle. They've been there for 30 years. You haven't worried about what's in them for the last 30. I don't think it matters right now either. But the harness and tying it off on the house is ridiculous. It's crazy. But that's what he did. But the good thing is he survived. He did not die. So Scotty understands. All right, we got Michael Holton coming in studio. He's going to join us for a little Holton on Hoops here at 5:20, which is going to be awesome. And then what's great this weekend is we got Championship Saturday. So we've got numerous games, 3 to be exact, where winner's moving on to the playoffs and the loser goes home. And it's going to start with the game on Friday with Boise State and UNLV. They played earlier this year down in Vegas, a 5-point win for the Broncos. So this should be a very close and competitive football game. It's going to be played up in Boise, which is advantage Broncos because they're in their own stadium, and the temperatures are going to be cold, in the 30s. I don't think it's going to snow. Wind shouldn't really be a factor, but you always got to wonder with the dome teams or schools that come from, nice weather areas, how that's going to have an impact. Heck, it could have an impact in the playoffs this year because, you could have Tennessee traveling up to Penn State, possibly. You're going to have situations in the playoff where you're going to have teams, warm weather teams, having to travel and play in, poor weather. Something they're not, accustomed to, so we'll see how they adjust. Alabama could be going to Ohio State. How will they handle that type of atmosphere with the weather? So the Broncos have an advantage playing at home, but these two teams were by far the best in the conference, and they match up really well. So a couple of things I'm looking at. One is how will UNLV handle the cold conditions, but also how is Boise going to do defending Hajj Malik Williams? He's a dual-threat quarterback. He's an excellent runner, and Boise State has struggled throughout the year defending the running quarterbacks. So that's going to be a critical matchup for Boise. How do they contain him? Can they keep him in the pocket? Can they prevent the big runs where he's able to gouge? And then, of course, with Ashton Jeanty, Heisman Trophy candidate, and deservedly so. He's putting up Barry Sanders-type numbers. He had over 120 yards in that first meeting between the two, but it was on 33 carries. So the Rebs are a good run defense. If they can prevent Jeanty from having the video game-type numbers, they're going to have a chance. And the other good thing about this game is neither team makes a lot of mistakes, so it should be a good, clean game, and both teams execute really well, and both are well coached. And Barry Odom, what a story. He was fired at Missouri. They ran him out of town. He shows up at UNLV, and now he's got the team in a position to get to the playoff. He's done a heck of a job. Now, in the Big 12 title game Saturday morning at 9, ASU's a small favorite by 2.5. Both coaches, Kenny Dillingham and Matt Campbell, are terrific. But the Devils are going to be without Jordan Tyson, by far their number one weapon. Will Arizona State have enough balance without Tyson? More importantly, the Cyclones don't defend the run well, and Cam Scattaboo and the Arizona State rushing attack is one of the best in the country. This could be a Cam Scattaboo type game. He's also their second leading receiver. So I think the Iowa State run defense will go a long ways in determining the winner here. Now, we talked with Rudy Carpenter earlier in the show, and I asked him about Jordan Tyson. How, what type of impact does that have on practice this week and game prep as you prepare to, play your first game without your number one weapon? And he said the players won't even really think about it because, they're looking at the game plan. They're trying to study the game plan, make sure they have everything memorized. And then when they're on the practice field, it's just a matter of going through those plays and then taking what the defense gives you. And so it's not something that players are consciously thinking about. He said where it shows up when you're missing a number one weapon like that is in those gotta-have-it situations. It could be 3rd down and 6 late in the game. Maybe it's a 4th down and 2. The gotta-have-it situations where the quarterback is used to leaning on one guy. Who else is going to step up in those situations? And can you have the same type of consistency in the gotta-have-it situations without your key, wideout? So that's kind of what we're looking at there. I think for the Big Ten title game with Oregon and Penn State, I just can't figure out why the line was as low as it is. Ducks by 3.5. I just don't. It's hard to see Oregon losing this game because of how well they're playing right now, especially on both sides of the ball and at the line of scrimmage. I don't know if Penn State's going to be able to run the football enough to create the balance to where they can, get the play action working and have some opportunities downfield. Oregon really doesn't have a weakness. They're like mid-40s against the run, so you would think that running the football would be a priority against them. So we'll see how things shake out. The one thing that's interesting to me is with the potential brackets, assuming that the chalk wins out, let's say that the chalk wins out. So you get Arizona State, you get, Boise, Clemson takes out SMU, Texas beats Georgia, Oregon beats Penn State. What you would likely have with your seeding in the playoff would be Clemson being the number 12 team. Your number 11 team would be Bama, Indiana at 10, Penn State at 9, Tennessee at 9, Penn State at 8. And then your 7 team would be Georgia. Your 6 team would be Ohio State. And at number 5 would be Notre Dame. So in that particular layout, if the chalk holds up along with Clemson for championship weekend, your 1 would be Oregon, 2 would be Texas, 3 most likely Boise based on the way the rankings are set up right now, with 4 being Arizona State. That means your first round matchups would be number 9 Tennessee at number 8 Penn State. You would have number 12 Clemson at number 5 Notre Dame. Number 6 Ohio State hosting number 11 Alabama. And then number 7 Georgia hosting number 10 Indiana. And so if you look at the way the seeding lays out, the winner of the 5-12 Notre Dame and Clemson would advance to face number 4 Arizona State. And the 6-11 matchup between Ohio State and Alabama under these circumstances would advance to face the number 3 Boise State. I would think that the number 5 and number 6 seeds would be highly coveted based on the pathway with the way the seeding is set up in the playoff. You would think. Because in the other side, Oregon as the number 1 would face either Penn State in a rematch of the Big Ten title game or Tennessee. And then Texas as the number 2 would have to face Georgia, who would most certainly beat Indiana. We could be on a crash course for Oregon and Georgia in the title game, maybe Texas and Oregon. That's kind of what it looks like. And you could get a semifinal matchup with Oregon and Notre Dame. How great would that be? So Oregon faces, let's see here. You would get Oregon against Penn State or Tennessee, followed by Oregon against Notre Dame or Arizona State, and then potentially Georgia in the title game. The playoff is going to be pretty awesome. Just the way it's set up, the way it's laid out. I think when we see it, especially with the campus site games, think about that. We were talking about the weather a while ago. You would get, I think it's pretty sweet to think of Tennessee traveling to Penn State, going up to State College. It's not going to be warm there. And Alabama traveling to Ohio, playing at the Shoe, taking on the Buckeyes. Not going to be warm there. So that's going to be fascinating to watch. And then the rest of the games after the first round will be on these bowl sites, which I'm not a big fan of. I'm hoping eventually they can rid the playoff of the bowls, and then we just have the championship game played on a neutral site. I think eventually we'll get to that point where you'll have campus site for all games except for the championship game. And why wouldn't we want that? Wouldn't that be great? The problem is these guys that run the bowls, there's a lot of money to be made, and they've been controlling the college football for a long time. So that they're resistant to give up the bowls. They're resistant to change, but eventually we've got to move in that direction. Because I'm telling you, when we see the first round and see what it looks like with these campus site games, it's going to be unbelievable. I mean, just right now with potential first-round matchups, you could have Alabama at Ohio State, Indiana at Georgia, Tennessee at Penn State, and Clemson at Notre Dame. That's going to be great. This is great for the game. It's great for college football fans because we're all going to be about this. And even, with the changes this year, I might add, too, with championship weekend, I know a lot of people are worried about, what's the value of a conference championship game if you're a team like SMU and you lose and you end up getting punked. You're in the playoff, but if you lose your title game, you're out potentially because Alabama. Like, that's not necessarily great, but isn't it pretty awesome to have 3 games on Friday and Saturday this weekend where it's an essential playoff game? Winner take all and move on to the playoffs, loser goes home. I think that's great for the sport. I love it when the stakes are high. When the stakes are high and you've got something of great value on the line where teams are competing for a playoff spot, I think it's terrific, especially for teams like, Boise or UNLV or Arizona State, who hasn't won a conference title since 96, and Iowa State, who hasn't won a conference title since 1912, and now they got a chance to get in the playoff. That's good. So that's what we're looking at there. So if I had to make my picks for the games this weekend, I slight lean to Boise on Friday night. I like Arizona State to take out Iowa State because of their run game in the morning on Saturday. I have no idea who's going to win the Georgia-Texas game. I would lean Texas slightly, but the problem is Georgia struggles against running quarterbacks. Quinn Ewers is not a runner. And how much better is their offensive line going to play this time around compared to the first time they matched up in Austin? The one concern I'd have for Georgia is that their offense has been a mess. Inconsistency from Carson Beck. He's got 12 picks on the year. The offensive line's been beat up. They're not getting consistent pass protection or run blocking. So maybe a slight lean to Texas, but their resume is not exactly great. I like Oregon to beat Penn State, and I think Clemson, with their experience and the fact they've been there before, take out SMU in the ACC. All right, we'll come back, and when we do, it's Holton on Hoops. The coach, Michael Holton, will join me, and we will talk some hoop. And also, he was down. He had a chance to check out Intuit Dome for the first time. I can't wait to get his take on that. The Clippers have the best arena in the NBA, which is wild to me. You got the Rip City Drive. All right, he's in studio. I love that we have a Michael Holton Open, my man.
No, hey, I'm telling you, man, I feel like somebody.
All right, I want to ask you because in our lifetime growing up, like the Clippers for decades were the worst franchise in all of sports, and they played in the LA Sports Arena, which you have verified it was awful.
Yeah, the LA Sports Arena was not really an NBA arena.
Yes.
I think the ABA used to play there because I think my dad took me to a game there, and USC used to play there. And I have a bad LA Sports Arena feeling because out of high school, USC recruited me, and they left me tickets in will call to see a USC game at the sports arena. And I went with my brother, and there were no tickets.
Oh.
And I shouldn't blame the arena for that, but obviously it ended my recruiting with USC. I'm like, I can't trust you to leave me 2 tickets. I can't go to your school. But I just have that and other associated memories with the sports arena, none of them good.
Yeah, and I understand that. So now you get called on duty to go and work the television broadcast the other night with the Clippers and Trailblazers. You were great, by the way. It was great to hear you with KC. But what was it like, the Intuit Dome? I have not been there, but everyone I've talked to that has had the same statement. I can't believe it. It was overwhelming. What was your takeaway from what you saw?
So it was overwhelming, and let me describe overwhelming and why it was overwhelming. It is designed like a maze, so nothing is straight circular. Nothing's a straight line. So you're trying to get to somewhere. Hey, where's the media room? Okay, go down, turn left, 2 elevators, go right. I mean, everything is really complicated to get to. Nothing is simple in the Intuit Dome. So you're in the bowels of the Intuit Dome before you ever see the court, and you're trying to make your way around. So I'm like, okay, this is really complex. And then when I finally saw the court, I was like, from the court looking up, it was overwhelming because of the screen and the size and the scale and the scope. And I'm like, okay, wow, this is over the top. Okay. But then as you get close to seats and you look at the seat has like a video game controller, arrows up, down, that you can vote on stuff and order drinks. And I don't know what all you can do, but I'm like, okay, that's overwhelming. That all of these things distract you from watching the game. The screens, the seat, everything it does. And then I had to go up to the broadcast position, and there's no straight line to get there. There's these different little gates that one row only goes up to this far, then there's a gate, and you go down, and then you go up 10 rows, and then there's a gate. So I'm like, okay, hold on. How do I get from here to there? And they said, oh, you got to go all the way down there, down the hall, on the elevator, up to. So it's designed to keep you compartmentalized in a section of the arena, not to have the free flow.
Wow. You know what blew me away, too? I've been down there recently. I went to a concert at the Forum. The entire Inglewood area with the new stadiums and the way it's been built up, it's not the Inglewood of the 1980s.
No, you're not. You telling me this is a true story. I pride myself on honesty and transparency. Where the Intuit Dome is built on Century and Prairie is where my now wife and then girlfriend lived when I met her.
Wow.
And so when I was explaining to her where it is, she's like, but that's where I live. I said, no, I know. That's when you met. That's where, yeah, you lived right there. Basically, half court was your apartment.
That's amazing.
But they just plopped down this massive arena in the middle of Inglewood. So between SoFi and the Intuit Dome, Inglewood has now become the go-to place in Southern California. Inglewood was not a destination.
No. In fact, the first time I went to Inglewood, I had a cab drop me off right across the street from the Forum. He said, hey, when the show's over, don't come over here. Stay over there to order your next ride out. He was trying to protect me from the surrounding area. A little bit dangerous down there.
No, Inglewood was Inglewood is not the Inglewood it once was. And to your point, the Intuit Dome is, I say overwhelming, but I really want to give it its just due. It is a very high-tech, specialized environment.
That's awesome. I have a broadcast question for you because I'm curious. I've never done it. What is it like to go from radio to television, and how do you know how to do each one? I've always wondered that with play-by-play guys because you're saying less on TV. What's it like going from radio to TV, and how do you just know what to do?
Well, they're different mediums, and to kind of agreeably disagree with you, you say less on radio than you do on TV. So radio is a play-by-play guy's job. I mean, to me, it's 75% play-by-play, 25% analyst because, Travis has to set the table. He has to tell you time and score, where the ball is, who's in the game, the recent substitutions. there's so much because there's no picture. There's so much traffic that the radio play-by-play guy has to always do so that the listener driving down the freeway or riding on his tractor or working in his shop can visualize the game. So the analyst just sprinkles in on top of that. You go to television where there's a picture, and you can describe the picture, and you can highlight the picture, and you can take the picture and describe and forecast what it means and what it's going to lead to. But you don't have to worry about the play-by-play guy needing so much real estate.
All right, that makes a lot of sense. That's great. I'm fascinated by that. All right, you said you had a couple of good stories for me, so why don't you give me some? I love your stories. You're a great storyteller.
And now I forgot the story that I was going to tell you. I was waiting on you to prompt me. I was going to tell you a story.
I didn't know what the stories are about, so I couldn't prompt you specifically. I just get excited when you tell me you got a couple of good stories for me. Well, let's start with this. The Blazers took the loss to the Clippers. We all know that. They've given up over 120 points in 4 of their last 5 games. What is the issue or the slippage on defense over the last week or so?
And now I can tell you a story. So the Dallas game and the Clipper game were very similar in that they were high-octane, high-scoring games. Both teams shot high percentages. And so if you were concerned about the Blazers' offense at any point this season, over the last 2 games, you saw a lot of offense. And so I was trying to describe that, whether it was radio or television, hey, at some point the Blazers are going to have to get some stops. They're going to have to, you're not going to win a shootout with Dallas or the Clippers. And so on my way over here, I was thinking about it, and it popped in my mind from a storytelling vernacular of what happens when you get in these high-octane, both teams are hot type of scenarios. And it hit me it was like, I don't know who made that song. I think it's a country song. Everybody at the bar is getting tipsy, right? And so it's like everybody's making shots. Everybody's taking and making shots, right?
Yeah.
And so the Blazers are in this trade-off where everybody's making shots. And I thought, the Blazers are going to have to develop a bartender-type defense where they cut off the shot taking and the shot making, right? At some point, the bartender says either last call or enough is enough. That's too many. And the Blazers can't get into offensive shootouts and win those games. The Blazers are built on defense. And so they're going to have to always hang their hat on defense. What happens is when you get in these high-octane, let's call them summer league type tempos where everybody's just scoring and running up and down and it feels really good, sometimes you get caught up in the fun of the offense and you lose track of the defense required to be competitive and win.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, so far this year, the Blazers have been improved defensively. They're about middle of the pack in defensive rating. What are some of the things you've seen this year that have contributed to better success defensively?
Well, I think the overall connectedness in terms of executing the scheme, whatever the scheme might be, is pretty consistent, number one. Number two, the point of attack defense, the way the Blazers guard the ball is pretty consistent, with the exception of maybe 2 games. I can think of OKC and Memphis where they just couldn't keep the ball in front of them.
Yeah.
But the rest of the time, they're doing a good job engaging the ball. And once this team engages the ball, it's usually Toumani Camara at the point of attack.
Yeah.
Now he's into the ball, and he's taking away some of the vision and or directing the ball to help. And so now the Blazers, to get in what they call their hawk defense, they get their hands up, and you see their length, and they shrink the floor. And now the ball handler is hesitant to drive it, and he's even second-guessing passing it because of the length. And so that point of attack defense is where it starts. And then when you get to the lane, it's not a direct drive. You've either dribble handoff or you had to get into some action to soften the pressure. But now you got Klingon or you got Ayton and you got people that are changing shots at the rim. So there's a few things that are happening in sequence that are contributing to the Blazers' defense being better than it was.
Okay, those are the positives on defense. Where are maybe a couple of areas defensively where they need to continue to improve?
I think limiting teams to one shot. Offensive rebounding by Blazer opponents hasn't been a big enough number to be a conversation, but it's a big enough number to break down the defensive intensity. Because now, you see teams getting 2 and 3 shots on a possession, and you're seeing it 4 or 5 times a night.
Yeah, and it's been happening more of late than it did at the beginning of the year.
And it has a discouraging or demoralizing effect on your defense. If your defense is built to, A, get into the ball, keep the ball in front of you, help and recover. I mean, all of the things you do sequentially to be good in a possession. And then somebody shoots a shot and they get a second shot and then they get a third shot. It's hard to get back to that good, loving, connected feeling. And so we're seeing in games now the Blazers having a more difficult time being consistent with the defensive pressure.
All right. Chauncey Billups, the last 2 games, has talked about how he's not pleased with the way they've started the game, particularly on the defensive end. What's he talking about with the start of games? What would he like to see from his group from tip-off on?
Well, you always want to, when you're a defensive team, to make sure that you make it hard for your opponent. So let me rewind the tape a little bit. When the game starts, both coaches start with half a dozen scripted plays, right? And I'm simplifying it. It may be one set with 3 options and then another set with 3 options. But you have 5 or 6 scripted plays.
Now, is that based on what he wants to do against that opponent, or is he trying to put certain guys on his own team in a situation to have success?
Either or. He either sees a matchup he likes, he sees an action he likes, or he wants to – there's a reason. But my point is not so much what the Blazers do with those 5 or 6 scripted plays. It's what the other team does with those 5 or 6 scripted plays. Because what I'm seeing is the Blazers losing their way early because of what the other team does. And so the Blazers might turn it over on their second possession, and it's a fast break layup. And all of a sudden, this team is not as resilient responding quickly to getting back to locking in. We are responding offensively by scoring. And now we score, you score, we score, you score, and we've kind of lost our game plan focus is what it looks like to me.
Okay, we're talking to Michael Holton. It's Holton on Hoops. He's in studio. We love this. He joins us every week here in studio. All right, I wanted to ask you about the point guard position. And again, I'm not a basketball mind like you are, but it would appear to me that the team is having issues finding consistency at the point guard role of who's going to run the offense. Sometimes it's Ant. Sometimes it's Scoot. We've seen Delano Banton in that role. And sometimes Denny Avia gets a chance to handle the point and facilitate the offense. What do you think Coach Billups is searching for there with trying to find consistency at the point guard role?
Well, I think he's trying to do it by committee, and therein lies possibly some of the challenges with how the team is starting games. We're not starting the game with a natural primary point guard. I mean, and that's no disrespect to Anthony Simons. He's certainly capable, and, he doesn't turn the basketball over, but I think what he does best, or when he's at his best, he's scoring.
Yeah.
Right? So, Ant, I don't think is the guy that, gets you in your pick and roll, reads the coverage, gets the ball to the right matchup. I just don't think that's the strength of his skill set. Again, not saying he can't do that. So you get Denny Avia bringing it, you get Jeremy Grant bringing it, you get other guys bringing it, and they're capable. But it's hard to underestimate him because I played that position.
Yeah.
How valuable it is to have that quarterback.
Yeah.
That guy that takes 3 dribbles back and says, all right, 4 up. And everybody knows, okay, the ball is in good hands. We're in good shape. And so the Blazers are playing that position, or I think having that role played by committee. And again, I'm not second-guessing it. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm not saying it should be different. But I'm answering your question with an explanation of what we're seeing.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I understand what you're saying where, like in the game on Sunday against Dallas, Luka doesn't bring the ball up the floor every time. But anytime they're in a situation where they've got to make sure that they run the play exactly the way they need to get it done, he's usually got the ball. And I could see the calmness. They all know that Luka's got it, and they all know what they're supposed to do. We see that sometimes with Minnesota where they have, Conley who can handle the rock and really calm everything down because he's used to that position and can run the offense.
Okay, so let's look at it like this. Let's flip it on its head, so to speak. Let's look at the end of the game. You always have a lineup you want to close with.
Mm-hmm.
Or you have a closer or a guy you're counting on in a 1 or 2 possession game down the stretch.
Yep.
Well, you have the same need and should have the same sense of urgency at the start of the game.
Yes.
If you want to ensure composure.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I do like some of the growth I'm seeing. Coach Billups was asked about where his team was at the beginning of the week, and he likes the progress that they've made. I guess the exciting part for me is the growth of some of the youngsters that we're seeing. Delano Banton continues to play well. Denny Avia is getting into a comfort zone. What do you think that is with Avia, where you can see the comfort in his game coming off the bench? Is he just now at a point where he understands his teammates and his role? Is it the bench role that he's adjusted to really well? What do you think it is with Avi that's allowed?
I think it's a
success?
combination of things, and Denny has said it himself. He has settled in.
Yeah.
And when somebody says I've settled in, it could mean a lot of things.
Yeah.
It could be the off the court transition from Washington, D.C. to Portland. It could be the practice facility. It could be where I live. It could be my routine, where I eat, where I shop. I mean, it could be a lot of things that go into settling in, right?
Yeah.
But let's talk about the basketball part. I think when he went to the bench, I felt like, not that there was pressure on him as a starter, but I felt he was more relaxed coming off the bench.
Yeah.
And then he was also playing against backups. And he was coming in the game, when the egg was already cracked. He wasn't having to make the omelet and be the chef.
Yeah.
He was coming in and he just, his game just looks so fluid. And then now you see the versatility of his skill set. And I can talk for this whole show about how he can impact the game and all of the different ways in which he does it.
The one thing I did not realize when I watched him in Washington that I'm seeing now, he's a much more physical basketball player than what I thought. He looks like he enjoys contact.
He might be the toughest player on the team.
He might be.
Right. Jabari Walker, and you got other guys that are physical, but Denny, his physicality is directed and intentional. I'll highlight one part of his game that I look forward to every night. Is that he beats the defender off of him when he drives the basketball. Some guys Euro step to get by you.
Yeah.
He Euro steps to hit you, right?
Yes.
Boom, boom. And then he's strong enough and tall enough that he sees over the top of his primary defender.
Yeah.
And he's tall enough to finish in traffic. And I'm going to ask Tom Haberstroh when I get a chance, and I don't have his number. I probably should so I can text him for things like this. I would love to see how many of his shots have been blocked, because I can't recall a time that Denny Avia got his shot blocked at the rim.
I don't recall off the top of my head, no.
He's so big and strong, and he knocks his guy off and he's able to finish. So he has an ingredient in his game that is unique on this roster.
Yeah. And what I like, too, is Coach said this a couple of games ago where, he wants his team to push the paces. You've talked about it at length. Well, Denny's one of those guys where when he gets the ball, rebounds, he is up the floor and he doesn't waste any time. And the coach has told him, like, hey, run up the floor. If your teammates join you, that's great. If they don't, it's your play to make. He's encouraging that.
Yeah, and then he also has that second gear that I think Lamar refers to it as deceleration,
Yeah.
right? Where if the defense is there and the defense is set and he drives, okay, he drops the shoulder on you. And then his step back, he decelerates, right?
Yeah.
And so now he's got his own landing angle of shot release. And so what I'm describing is a guy that has really polished his craft in terms of angles of attack.
All right. How valuable is this time? The Blazers, we got the announcement for the games that are added into the schedule, now that we know where the knockout round is going to be in the NBA Cup. So the Blazers are going to play on Sunday in L.A., and then they're going to come back home. They don't have another game. They get Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday off before they play that next game against it's going to be San Antonio. So you get that basically 5 days off, 4 days off. Well, how valuable is that time, and how do coaches utilize rare open days on the schedule to where you can get the team together?
Incredibly valuable. Let's go back to when the team got blown out by Memphis at home, and Chauncey said, hey, if you guys can sleep off of this one. I mean, it was just, it was a low point in the season. But the team had 3 days at home after that. The next day there was the meeting, the everybody getting on the same page meeting.
Yes.
And then there were 2 days of practice, and then the team beat Minnesota twice. So look at that gap that you're talking about the same way. 3 or 4 days at home to practice, watch tape, get treatment, and pick up your laundry, do your shopping, do whatever you do to get in your rhythm and groove is very valuable.
Well, I'm wondering what you were talking about defensively, right? Like, is that a time where the coaches can work with the players to tighten up some of those areas of the game, whether it be defense or some of the things you were describing? Will they utilize it for that too?
Yeah, of course you'll address the things that you've seen slippage. And in the pros, unlike college, You don't go have a marathon practice
Yeah.
to get your swagger back.
So how do the practices work? Like, if you're wanting to tighten some things up on defense, do you go over some sets in practice to reinforce that? Like, how does that? I don't know how
So-
an NBA practice works because I've never seen one.
Well, let me preface it. I don't see a bunch of them either. I don't go to practice, but my feel is at the NBA level, having played, is you don't take breaks in your schedule to exert yourself physically. You exert them to get healthy,
Yeah.
and to exert yourself mentally, revisiting the tools that are in the box from training camp.
Yeah.
So to answer your question a little differently, a lot of the tightening up the gaps will be video,
Okay, that makes sense.
but video collectively.
Yeah, and that reminds me of what you said about pro players compared to college players, where you can't throw a play at a college team that you've never practiced before, but in the NBA, as you pointed out, you can draw something up new on the sideline and a timeout, and the guys can go out and execute it. That's the difference between a pro and a college player.
Yeah, and so to further answer your question, what will happen in a gap like that is you may get on the floor to work on your defensive help and recovers and your rotations, but you're not doing it in live contact.
Well, like usual, it goes by too quick. Michael Holton in studio, my man.
I always enjoy it.
Okay, so you're going to be on TV the next couple of games. What's your schedule?
Well, right now we're really wishing and hoping for Lamar to feel better. And
Yes.
and I've been informed that I'll do tomorrow's game, and there's a strong possibility that I'll make the trip to Los Angeles while Lamar, kind of gets himself up and running. And so I'm just that player that's going to come off the bench and not turn it over.
I like that. We like those type of players. Every team needs one.
Every team needs a guy that can just come off the bench, play his role, and then go back to the bench.
How's your grandson doing?
Oh man, that dude, man, Roman Ace. I got to go see him, man. I bought him a new chair. Just keep buying him stuff, right? I'm the typical granddad.
I love it. All right, big thanks to Michael Holton. We'll keep things rolling here at Rip City Drive.
I told him that anybody that sleeps well tonight, you're a loser.
Yeah, Michael Holton is one of those dudes. And by the way, this is a great song. It's the 40-year anniversary of Beverly Hills Cop. The movie's phenomenal, but the soundtrack is equally great. Wow, wow. All right. I'm just taking a look at the soundtrack right now. You remember there used to be a day, I'm sure for those of you in my age range, you can remember, but Shaq, you probably remember too, but the soundtracks used to be a big deal back in the day.
Yeah,
the
I
movie
like the music
soundtracks.
video aspect of it. It was like an extended trailer of these movies that have music videos.
Yeah, there's no doubt. It was. The videos were great, and the music was critical. I think this is probably my favorite. A little Patti LaBelle from Beverly Hills Cop. Yeah, this is a great song. That's a great soundtrack. 40 years. How old am I? Yeah, I'm 49. 49. That's the same number of free throws that Brian No hit in our free throw challenge, too. 49. Yeah, so that was 1984, so I would have been 9 years old. Yeah. Needless to say, my mom did not let me watch Beverly Hills Cop when I was younger. There were certain movies that were considered contraband. I had to sneak into the house with my buddy Jason. She would not have let me watch Beverly Hills Cop because of the profanity. She would have deemed that inappropriate. So we would literally sneak movies in. And the problem is, it wasn't like they were CDs, right? It's hard to stick a VHS tape down your pants. But we did that when we'd sneak certain movies in where we knew we could see some boobies or whatever. Or if Eddie Murphy was in it, because he had a lot of F-bombs. And so we would have to literally sneak stuff in. And if my mom found it, she'd be very mad.
I had the same problem with The Adventures of Ford Fairlane because it starred Andrew Dice Clay.
Yeah.
A movie that's not that offensive, but it had an offensive comedian in it. So
Exactly.
I wasn't allowed to see it.
No, I know. Yeah, my mom was, man, she was a stickler for things that were inappropriate. So we had to be very sneaky with certain things. Very sneaky. There were a lot of things hidden in my, between mattresses in my room. I was like, okay, where's my mom not going to snoop? And it was tough because she was very good at finding things. And my mom, too, she was one of those moms where it's like, she still has a nose where like she can smell anything from like a mile away. So I knew if I was doing anything outside of the lines and I come back home that let me give you a little advice, kids, the youngsters out there. If you get into a habit of kissing your mom goodnight when you're young, then she's going to expect that. And then when you don't do it, she's going to know you did something wrong. Because there were times where I'm like, I can't trust her nose right now. So if I didn't go in to kiss her goodnight when I would get home, then she would come down to my room to figure out what was going on. And so, just saying. I'm not encouraging you to do things that are wrong. I'm just saying that if you set the precedent and then you don't do it, she's going to come looking for you. That's all. That's all I'm trying to communicate. All right, big thanks to Michael Holton. My man, Alex, my buddy Alex just reached out and said he is a great guest. I agree. Michael Holton is awesome. Big thanks to Michael Shacker. Rudy Carpenter was great, former ASU quarterback.